Good evening, His Excellency Hideaki Mizukoshi, Ambassador of Japan to Sri Lanka, Members of Parliament, Heads of Diplomatic Missions, Vice Chairman Duminda Hulangamur, Deputy Vice Chairman Krishan Balendra, past chairpersons of the Chamber, members of the Board and Committee, CEO and Secretary General Mr. Buonaka Pereira, the Secretariat of the Chamber, distinguished invitees, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, Excellency, for accepting our invitation and gracing this occasion as the chief guest this evening. It is timely that we have you to grace this AGM as my final occasion as the chair of the Ceylon Chamber. We have worked very closely with Your Excellency's mission during this last year in finding suitable solutions for Sri Lanka's economic recovery. Japan has always been a very close friend of Sri Lanka, especially during this difficult period, and we are encouraged to see discussions on how bilateral trade and investment will evolve going forward. Sri Lanka, as you know, will require much FDI, infrastructure, technology, technical expertise, and in several sectors of our economy as it looks to bolster its exports and investment portfolio. As Sri Lanka looks at deepening its market access with the East and works towards joining the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership, the RCEP, Japan will be a key partner in this endeavor. I know the DDO has occupied all of our minds the last few days, so let me speak a few words on the recent announcement on the debt restructuring, given it's important to us as the private sector and the public at large. We appreciate the steps taken by our President, Central Bank, and the Ministry of Finance in navigating the debt restructuring process and prioritizing the financial sector's stability. The recent announcement on the domestic debt optimization will provide much needed clarity and the way forward in terms of our domestic debt. We hope this will now be passed in Parliament and all stakeholders work together in this process. The recent steep fiscal changes with our taxation as well as the DDO are signals of our country's commitment towards regaining debt sustainability. We hope these steps will encourage all our external creditors to fast-track the discussions so that we can bring to close restructuring hopefully by end of September, before the second tranche of the IMF is due. Friends, leading this chamber over the last 2 years has been amongst the most challenging periods of my career. At the time I took over the reins in 2021, we were emerging from the pandemic, only to head straight into the worst post-independent economic crisis the country has ever faced. I've witnessed firsthand the unfolding of the economic crisis and the monumental effort that our chamber and the stakeholders undertook to bring about stability. The Ceylon Chamber ventured beyond its traditional scope of operations to educate a wider audience on the urgent need for stable and a functional economy. During this period of political instability, the Ceylon Chamber rallied key stakeholders, including and leading the Joint Chambers initiative and holding discussions with professional bodies. In addition to meeting regularly with the leading political parties and called on many of the diplomatic community to facilitate a consensus on the economic policies and actions required to revive our economy. During the period of this political instability, the Ceylon Chamber engaged with all the political parties, and we even made the trip to Kandy to meet the Mahasangha. I believe it's the first time in the process of developing a national consensus that the Chamber ventured doing this. And it was all to make sure that we form a national government at that time and to steer the country out of the economic crisis that we were in. The Ceylon Chamber's leadership also very frequently met with key policymakers, the IMF, contributing significantly towards securing board approval for the extended fund facility program, which we eventually got. We are grateful and appreciate the continuous engagement that the Chamber was able to have with the Central Bank of Sri Lanka, the IMF, the World Bank, ADB, diplomatic community, and other bilateral and multilateral agencies during the time when things were really bad, so that we could steer this country and our private sector forward. I must also mention that I'm really proud of the resilience shown by the Chamber membership and the private sector in general in the last 2 years. Firms have had to navigate political instability. All of you remember the shortage of fuel, the 16 to 18-hour power cuts that we had, but we continued these challenges and we managed to get through. Though we suffered through these difficult times, we made sure as a private sector, the products and services were provided for both domestic and international consumers. The challenges that our sectors face domestically have now reversed, and we are seeing external challenges where global demand is falling, and this has been seen by much of our exporting community. I'm sure our firms will continue to find ways to innovate and seek new markets to neutralize some of these challenges while looking at growth. Our private sector has over the years learned to survive in the face of formidable challenges. Ladies and gentlemen, it is now up to us, the private sector, to stand together, preserve our enterprises, and prepare our businesses for growth mode as we emerge from these difficulties from the last 12 months. Unfortunately, these challenges were only compounded for our SMEs and our entrepreneurs, for whom survival and perseverance were the top priority last year. While we look at macro policies that will shape our economy, we must also not forget the backbone of the economy, which is suffering, which is our SMEs. I sincerely hope that the announcement of the DDO and the normalization of interest rates and the improvement in demand will ease some of these pains from our SMEs. As the chair of this chamber, I'm very delighted to see the corporate sector and members come together to support noble causes spearheaded by the chamber. During the last year, your chamber initiated 2 significant programs to contribute to the community. The Divyata Deriyak initiative supported families which were vulnerable to the economic crisis and assisted about 1,500 low-income families in Kegalle and Colombo districts, where we gave dry rations worth of 5,000 each. In early this year, the Ceylon Chamber of Commerce successfully facilitated the adoption of 105 Suez area ambulances valued over 525 million rupees to support Sri Lanka's healthcare system. Recognizing the importance of this service, which is deployed in various regions of our country, providing critical healthcare services, the Chamber took the lead in mobilizing support from our corporate sector and individual donors to contribute towards the adoption of these ambulances. Our endeavor with this initiative is to drive positive change and create meaningful impact on the lives and peoples of Sri Lanka. Suez Area 1990 ambulances were instrumental in saving many lives during the COVID pandemic. I am truly touched by the generosity of our chamber membership, and I salute each and every one of the donors who came forward for this noble cause. Thank you. The willingness of our government to accept independent input has enabled the Ceylon Chamber to have an impact through its advocacy and public-private dialogue efforts during the last 12 months. We have been able to provide inputs on numerous recommendations to the government's effort related to tax policy, SOE reform, central bank's monetary reform, energy reform, and the overall investment and doing business climate. Several proposals from the submission of the national budget for 2023 were accepted by the Ministry of Finance and included in the budget speech, which was a notable success for Ceylon Chamber. The Chamber is currently actively contributing to numerous presidential task forces, committees, ministry-level committees, and oversight committees of Parliament. We look forward to the government and Parliament continuing to maintain this level of dialogue with the private sector and the wider civil society. Beyond policy, the Ceylon Chamber focused on maximizing trade facilitation opportunities for our members. With the reopening of most of our global borders for trade and investment, the Chamber organized several events such as seminars, B2B meetings, networking opportunities for our members and business councils, enabling them to connect and network with overseas missions in Sri Lanka as well as international business counterparts. The Chamber also held its members forum in 2022, giving the members of the Chamber's 19 Business Council an opportunity to interact with the ambassadors, high commissioners based in Sri Lanka, the representatives of development partners and senior officials attached to trade and investment, tourism-related government institutions. We have focused more closely on entrepreneurship and SMEs during this last year. Our work with the ILO's South Asia Leadership in Entrepreneurship project helped us to promote entrepreneurship as a viable career option amongst many Sri Lankan youth. We have assisted the SMEs by enhancing the capacity building through 12 capacity building programs on export facilitation for development officers of the Export Development Board. Our activities in the sphere of trade facilitation focused on regional SMEs, including workshops and trade procedure functionality and the export services available to Sri Lankan SMEs conducted in Jaffna and Kandy during the year. On the sustainability front, to advance private sector investment for projects aligned to the Sustainable Development Goals, the Ceylon Chamber worked with UNDP Sri Lanka as well as the BOI and Sustainable Development Council of Sri Lanka. As a novel initiative this year was to facilitate our members in accessing their visas with the launch of the Ceylon Chamber Visa Facilitation Center. Currently, we offer members an expedited process to submit their visa applications for the United Kingdom. Through our collaboration with VFS Lanka Private Limited, we hope to extend this to other country visas as well. Your Excellency, we would hope that Japan will sign up for the same facility and allow our members this benefit. Ladies and gentlemen, future of Sri Lanka and the private sector. As I look back on the stability we have now, I sense we are gradually setting into complacence. As the shortage of essential items eases, queues have become a thing of the past, and certain economic indicators improve marginally, we seem to be acquiring a false sense of assurance that the worst is behind us. We all witnessed a simple QR code implementation that eased our fuel distribution. A long-awaited unified digital ID, if implemented, soon can connect the key line agencies for tax collection and the welfare payment, which has been the talk of the town the last few days. Hopefully, this type of reform will make significant improvement. We must remember that while ensuring the continuous supply of electricity is vital, we need to focus on reform that will enable the unbundling of the state utility and implement concepts like power wheeling that will make our industries more competitive. Similar moments of complacency in the past have resulted in lack of commitment to the implementation of the vital reforms. This is the reason, ladies and gentlemen, that we are now in the 17th program under the IMF. And why do we not have a good track record of completing or continuing the progress we are capable of. As such, this is a clarion call for the government, members of the parliament, including the opposition, and the state officials to be decisive in their thinking and implement reforms, in my opinion, that are a decade or two late. The IMF program is the first and foundational step in the journey towards the country regaining credibility in the international markets. The government will have to meet KPIs every 6 months for the next 4 years in order to receive the next few rounds of the disbursements that we have been promised. This requires very careful navigation of the different reform pieces around the state-owned enterprises, social transfer programs, monetary and fiscal policy, to name a few. It is noteworthy that the first time in Sri Lanka's history, governance and addressing corruption vulnerabilities are part of this program. Considering all these nuances, the clear understanding is that we cannot be complacent about the fragile stability we have achieved, as it can easily erode if we do not stay this path and implement the credible reforms. Any pause or delay in the IMF program will bring us back to square one and complicate our debt restructuring discussions, which has taken a lot of doing. Hence, the steps taken now by the government and the private sector will determine how we emerge from our current challenges and signal the directions for the nation's economy and the prosperity of our people. We must all understand that the historical delay of these reforms has led us to the current economic situation. This chamber will stand firm and bold and lead the private sector in managing these difficult times. From among the recovery levers, FDI and export growth will remain crucial. As well, designed social safety net will also be required to ensure social stability. Friends, as I close my address, I would like to express my appreciation for the invaluable contribution extended by the Chamber network during my tenure as chairman. It has been truly rewarding and a journey of learning that has enabled me to work with many impressive people all across Sri Lanka. My sincere gratitude to the Chamber Board, to our past chairman, the committee, sector and steering committees, and our dynamic Chamber team for working tirelessly towards the multiple agendas pursued by the Chamber. The collaboration extended to us by the associate and joint chambers, trade associations, and partner organizations is also deeply appreciated. I would also like to thank our member companies that supported us during this difficult period and also gave advice on the direction the Chamber should take at certain difficult junctions when I called upon you. We are also grateful to all the media institutions for their support in facilitating our role as the voice of the private sector. I look forward to watching the Chamber's role grow in depth and breadth as it continues to stay relevant through changing times. I'm very confident that the new chairman, the board, the committee, and the secretariat will continue to deliver on the expectation of our members and stakeholders to facilitate a conducive environment for the private sector as we reset our economy back to a sustainable growth trajectory and building our vision for 2048. Let me take this opportunity once again to thank you, Excellency Hideaki Mizukoshi, for gracing this occasion and look forward to the continued strong relationship between the Chamber and the Embassy of Japan, and most importantly, the generous people of Japan. Thank you all for your attention, and I look forward to your continued support to the Ceylon Chamber of Commerce. Thank you.